And I am going to first put this into my sonic cleaner. It's got a lot of dirt and dust and stuff inside. Inside my ultrasonic cleaner, I use a mixture of Simply Green. This is a special Simply Green that's made for aircraft cleaning, and it's safe for all forms of metal. I use this in a 13-to-1 mixture. I will put this into the sonic cleaner first for a few minutes to get this nice and clean and any junk that's inside here cleaned out, and then I will blow it out when it's done, and it won't take too long, just a little under 120 degrees. We'll give it about 7 minutes. Okay, the sonic cleaner just finished, so I'm going to fish the Paramilitary out. This aircraft cleaner stuff works great. It's a great little degreaser, but what I also love about it is that it's just super safe on all metals. Yeah, this just looks really great. So now what I'm going to do is I will blow this out. I'm going to rinse it off and blow it out, and then I'm going to lubricate it. So the one thing I don't have in my shop is a sink. I have to bring water in. I do have a garage, but it would be nice to have a sink maybe one day in a shop. I don't have one in here. So what I do have this little pressure washer, and I just keep a bucket around. So when I gotta rinse something off, I just do it in a bucket. And that's worked pretty good for me. So I just like to clean all that out. And then I always blow as much water and everything as I can get out of any knife I work on if I cleaned it in the sonic cleaner. We'll just give that a few more minutes to fully dry. Alright, I took all the dirt and lint and junk out of the inside. It's nice and clean in there, and it just needs a few more minutes for that coating and everything to dry off. So mounting the Paramilitary, if there was an imaginary line going from your tip to the end of the blade, if it was a straight line, you want that straight line to line up with your jig in a straight line. So if that was an imaginary line and that came down to there, you want those in straight alignment. Also, on the back part of a Paramilitary is the flattest part to clamp into to get your knife centered. We are just looking to match the existing edge angle. So we will be doing the Sharpie trick. This looks like a relatively in good shape Paramilitary. I don't think it's going to need a lot of work. I will be starting on a 400 grit CBN wheel. And the first thing I'm going to do is see about finding my proper angle. And this, to me, looks a little low. It's very close though. I'm going to go with just maybe a small turn here and check it again. Now, with a blacked out knife like this one I believe is probably just powder coated. I don't know if it's a fancy coat like Cerakote or anything like that, but you do want to be careful with coated knives, especially when you're setting your initial angle. Yeah, so that looks good. We wouldn't want to remove black from the back part of the blade. And what I like to do is also just do a nice check. Yeah, and make sure that we're not removing Sharpie from anywhere that we don't want it. And that all looks good to me. Yeah, we're perfect down at our tip. The back here is must be a little rounded off. But that should all even out with our just regular sharpening. Yeah, and I'm feeling a burr there, but you can see I have a little bit of a weird thing going on in the very back here. So I'm gonna have to grind a little bit more back here to get that flattened out. Not uncommon. Many times when a knife is sharpened, they kind of miss certain spots. They're not always perfect. Not uncommon to find high spots and low spots. Sometimes they're in the tip. And sometimes it's back in the heel. You can see we're getting there. See, it's starting to come out. We'll get that nice and even, and then I'll go to the other side. Yeah, and that's almost perfect. We need to do a little bit more here in the middle, right in that middle section. I'm seeing some previous, yeah, there's still a little bit of previous grind marks, and I want a nice even grind. Yeah, I got my burr for just about the whole length there. There's still a little bit here. It's still a little fat in the middle. But I'm going to go to my other side so that we definitely keep everything nice and even. A little more in the tip. I'm still seeing a tiny bit of Sharpie up here in the tip. So I need a little work on the front. And then I'll be done on this 400. And we will go to the final sharpening on 1000. Yeah, and that's looking pretty good. And that bevel looks, yeah, that looks good. It looks nice and even. So I'm going to do just 3 evening strokes on each side. 1, 2, 3. 3 on this side, and then we are going to go to our next stone. Yeah, I'm good. And that feels, yeah, feels really good. All right, I'm going to show you. Everything looks good there. Got a nice new bevel, and this was a 400 grit CBN. A lot of times I'll start on 200, but this knife did not need that. It was just a tiny bit dull. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pick up my angle guide and move it to my other machine. That's the nice thing about having 2 Tormek machines. I can simply just move to the next machine, and by pulling my angle guide out, I come to the next machine. Since my CBN wheels never change size, it's exactly the right angle. And now I'm on to my 1000 grit CBN wheel. And you'll notice that I'm not using water. I don't have to because I'm using CBN. CBN is cubic boron nitride, and it actually repels heat. And on a sharpener like the Tormek that's only going at 90 RPMs, building up heat is not really an issue at all. You don't even feel the blade getting warm at all. Yeah, and that looks really good. There's still a little bit back in the heel here that I don't love, and I think it's just work from the factory. I'm gonna do a little work back there. So I just don't love how that looks. Yeah, there's a tiny high part that just isn't beautiful, but I'm being super nitpicky. All right. Yeah, and that feels good. Now, I'm not gonna, if you only have the Tormek system, you would have to hone on the Tormek wheel. I'm not limited in that, and so I am going to pull this out of my jig because I know it's good to go, and I am going to hone it on my leather strop. One cut test here. Yeah, this is super sharp. I'm going to do one more pass though. I have on my leather wheel over here, I have an even higher Micron. I believe it's 22,000, or is it 14,000? So the strop we were just on was 5,000 grit with 1 Micron diamond paste. This one, I think it's 14,000, which is on here. Or it could be, oh, here it is. I'm sorry. Yeah. It's 22,000. This is 1 micron on here. So I'm just going to give this a quick little pass with the leather strop with the 1 micron. That's just going to mirror it up even a little bit more. Yeah, still beautifully razor sharp. You guys see that? All right, so this is done. The one thing I do like to use on matte colored finish knives here, or combat style knives, is one of my favorites is Flitz tactical matte finish. And you just literally spray this on, give it a few seconds, and then give it a buffing, and it's like a non-shiny finish. So if you know, for matte knives, and it does a real nice job of protecting matte finish knives. That's what my favorite for knives, although I've said many times I am not a big fan of coated knife coatings and coated knives, but this is one of my favorite finishes to use on it. I don't really love them because eventually they all get scratched up and don't look great, but they do have all these new coatings out now too. Called, one's Cerakote, and some are a lot stronger than just powder coating. Yeah, and this Paramilitary is in great shape, and we are done with that. So next up is this very nice Japanese Nakiri, and it has a super tiny bevel. I mean, we're talking really micro bevel here. So I'm going to again do this on the Tormek. This knife is incredibly dull. It is not cutting paper at all. So I will set this up, but it's gonna have to start on our 400 grit CBN, and then we'll go to 1000 on this one too. It is currently surprisingly dull, but it wouldn't even. I did a couple of passes on a 400 grit stone by hand that I have over there on the counter. You can see, which is at least making it cut again now. So I know it doesn't need a whole lot of work, tiny bit. And in fact, I think because now that it's cutting, just from what I did with hand sharpening, I'm just going to go right to the 1000 CBN wheel. I was going to do the 400, but I think I'm going to go right to the 1000 on this one. Okay, so again, I just want to match an existing edge angle, so I'm not going to have to measure here. I'm just going to look to see when I'm happy with what I'm seeing removed here, and that actually looks perfect. Yeah, that's really good. It's keeping the nice micro bevel, and I'm going to start here. Typically, I usually find at 1000 grit I need to do at least 7, sometimes more, to get a burr. Three, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yep, and I fill burr the whole way. So that looks good. I'm going to go to my other side. Now that's a more difficult burr. If you're first starting out, you might have a hard time detecting with your finger 1000 grit burr. It does take a little bit of like practice and getting used to, and if you don't have great feeling in your hands, that can be tough too. But I can also see the burr being raised on here too. So I can tell when that burr's been raised just by looking at it. I'll see that little tiny reflection, and that looks good. So I'm going to do 3 more just nice finishing strokes on each side. I'm going to do a little lift here at the end because we do have that tip rounds. Alright, let's do our other side. This is very light pressure. Alright, I feel pretty good about that. So this time I'll just home for you guys on the Tormek, and then I might do all 3, or maybe I'll just finish on the high speed. Well, it's actually variable speed. Strop over there with the 2200 diamond lapistry paste that I sprayed on the leather over there. And honing, as I have mentioned before, is probably the hardest part for people to learn sharpening. It takes time to get the right touch and the feel, and a lot of times, especially if you're doing it on the Tormek wheel, it takes a little longer since it's going slower for it to, you know, do its magic. And usually if you're not getting the results you want, you're probably not spending enough time honing, and you're probably off on your angle maybe a little bit. And if you really pay attention and you look really close, you will see that burr coming off. And you'll get a feel of what's the right pressure for you. And then I'm gonna, as I said, I want to hit it, give it a little bit of a mirror polish. I'm gonna hit it on the leather wheel. And that feels really good to me. I always like to finish with a cut test. Slicing beautifully and push cutting beautifully at all levels of that knife. And this is done. So I'm on to the last two Japanese knives in the set. So we have just a regular Japanese chef's knife and a small utility knife. The Japanese knife had a tiny bit of oxidation and actual little bit of rust that was starting down here. I could see a little bit of orange, and there was a tiny bit up here. So to remove that, a lot of times I would use either a Japanese rust eraser. Here they are. So here I would use these, but it was really tiny. So I actually decided to use just a little bit of Flitz polish instead of the rust erasers, which can be a little bit more aggressive and can change the look of the knife. I figured we'd just go with a little bit of Flitz polish and a regular buff to take off any of that oxidation and what could have been maybe a little bit of rust starting. Not uncommon on high carbon knives, which most of your Japanese good knives are high carbon. Very good to treat them with Japanese knife oil, and that's what I will finish this. So I'm gonna just do a little bit of polishing to get that little bit of finish off that I did not like what I was seeing there. It wasn't deep, it wasn't, you know, I didn't even have to, like, if I was concerned, I'd put it under the scope just to make sure it wasn't pitting or anything, but I didn't see anything that gave me that kind of concern. So this is just basically just a general little polishing up, and that should knock anything there off that would have been concerning. And then I'm just gonna finish with a microfiber cloth here to get off any residual stuff. And wait till you see how this is going to look gorgeous when it's done, because you'll see there'll be a little bit of black stuff that will come off over there, but there is no more. That took care of that little bit of orange possible rust that was just slightly visible and starting to form on this knife. And that is, you know, one of the concerns anytime you have a Japanese knife. If it's high carbon, it does not hurt to treat it with a little bit of Japanese knife oil called Camila oil. It's not expensive. It's food safe. I use it on a lot of things here in the shop. Show you what it looks like. I have links to it in my Amazon store. This is Camila oil. It's yellow. I find it to be, it's a little different than mineral oil, but it's in the same family as a mineral oil. It's just as food safe. I find it's a little thinner than mineral oil. It's a little more, what do we call that? Viscosity is a little thinner than what I find on most other knives. So that looks great. And this one too, this one's not as dull as that Nakiri. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if this one is cutting. It's probably a little rough. But let's see. Let me see if I can see if this is cutting. No, it's actually not. It's like, oh, yeah, it is in some parts. Yeah, it's a little rough. It's totally stopped right there. Yeah, so the edges probably rolled on it a little bit. Yeah, I can see it. It's yeah, just needs a little bit of a tune up here. So no big deal. Again, this one I'm gonna go right to 1,000 grit. Just stopping the rotation. Since our Nakiri is just about the same size, we should be very close when we go to match this edge angle. So let's see. Yeah, it looks good. Do just light pull. Yeah, that's perfect. Again, it's like, say maybe we could go a turn. Yeah, maybe a turn lower. I'm gonna go one full turn lower. Now let's start there. One thing I'm noticing, I think this knife is a little thick in the tip. Yeah, it is. I think it's a little fat in its tip. But we have a good burr all the way down. So I'm gonna go to my other side and we'll see. Yeah, I see a burr raising. Should be 7. I see what might be a couple tiny microchips, but I'm hoping they're going to shed off here. I'm going to do 3 more strokes on each side. And that's the one thing when you start up high sometimes, especially with Japanese knives, there are times I've sharpened the whole knife and then found a chip. And it does happen, you know, but our goal is always to remove as little metal as possible. I'm not going to pull it out of my jig because I want to see how the edge looks once I get it honed here. I want to see if there's chips still there or if they come off. Getting a little bit of a shock today, a little static electricity. That's never pleasant. Did you see that? Did you guys see that? It actually shocked through the tape. That was pretty cool. I think it looks pretty good. Ooh, there goes that shock again. But I want to check it definitely with a paper cut test. I always like to be sure there's no chips that are going to hold that blade up. And is that a chip? No, that was, what's there? No, that feels good. Beautiful. A final hone with the 22,000. And I have found that this really, it does a couple things. It really puts a beautiful mirror on it. And this is what really takes a Japanese knife for me to incredible, that razor sharpness feel. Yeah. And you can see how beautifully that is just cutting right through there. So this one's done. All right, so now we're on the utility knife, and then we'll be done with this whole set of Japanese knives. I will, one other thing I will do is I will treat this with a little bit of, like I said, Japanese knife oil for my customer. I just put a tiny bit on here, and I will rub that in and then let that sit on there a little bit and then wipe it off before it goes back to them. Just be careful if you're doing it with your finger that you don't rub up against that blade. You don't want to turn your finger into sushi for dinner. All right, so we'll let that sit on there. And I didn't show you this earlier. The Nakiri I have over here, I noticed the handle looked a little dry to me, so I am treating the handle of the Nakiri for my client, and just put some oil on there and just letting that work its way in. I decided to go with a tongue oil on that one, and that'll go sit on there for about 15-20 minutes, and then I'll just wipe it off, and that's a good hardening oil, and that will do a nice job of giving them a waterproof or semi-waterproof handle on that knife. All right, so we have one left, and it is the small utility paring knife. Let's see. It looks good to me. Yeah, I don't see any chips. In fact, this is the best looking one to me of all of them. And you can see, yeah, it's even cutting. It's a little rough feel. But all this is going to need is a nice little touch-up on our 1000 grit CBN wheel. I have a couple ways I sometimes like to do these small knives. I have a small knife jig that I built of my own. Sometimes I like to use this. This one's big enough that I can use the Tormek regular jig, but if I have something really small, I use a jig that I built myself. There. And I'm just going to do my normal, like I told you, from imaginary line from tip to heel. And then bring that straight back to the line of the jig. Doesn't have to be perfect, but you know, as close as you can get it to that being a nice straight line. Make sure it's not moving around on you. And then we will mark our existing edge angle. And now we just have to match it up. Now, since this knife is a lot smaller, we're probably going to have to make some adjustments this time around, let's say. And not a lot. We're actually looking pretty good. Yeah, that looks good. I'm actually gonna go with that. It looks really good. So let's see. And you'll notice as I get to the tip, I'm lifting. I'm not turning into it. I'm not angling it. I'm just lifting the handle of the knife. That's how you keep your bevels nice and even. Is using the lift method. Stop there. It's close to 7. Yeah, and I am feeling. I'm feeling a nice burr, and you'll see I have a nice even bevel on that side. Here we go again, other side. I'm starting to see the burr raise. It's not on the full knife yet. It's at the tip. Looks good. Doing close to 7 each side. Got a 6. This is probably 7. That looks pretty good. Feels good. Alright, so this time I'm just going to do... This looks real good, so I'm just going to do 2 cleanup strokes. 1, 2. 1, 2. A little less pressure this time. Yeah, that feels good. All right, so I'm gonna leave in the jig. I'm gonna come up here and just make sure that everything's feeling good and looking good. Ooh, very dry in the shop today, and I'm really getting a nice bit of static shock from my strop. Never pleasant. Sometimes I'll hook one of these to my arm and to the tool if it's really bad, because sometimes it literally can be really send you. Today just seems to be minor shocks. All right, good there. Okay, over to my hone. Doesn't need much, usually. 2 quick passes. Feels plenty sharp. Let's do our paper cut test. Yeah, cutting good. Yeah, very good. And this is ready to go back. So that set of knives is completely done. See a tiny bit of orange back here. Yeah, right back here. So I am going to treat that, and I'm going to do the same thing I just did with the other one, which I'm not going to bother with Japanese rust eraser. I'm just going to use a tiny bit of Flitz polish on that, and that will probably get that little bit of orange haze off, and it'll make the whole knife look nice. Now, one thing you want to be careful, if you do like I'm doing, as I've mentioned many times before, I try and do all the polishing work and stuff before I sharpen. But there are those occasions where, like just now, I saw something I didn't like, so I got to go back, and I'm going back and kind of cleaning this knife up a bit. If you buff it, be very, very careful. I'm going to buff. Be careful not to catch your edge and dull the knife. So I don't want to get anywhere near my edge of my knife. And it's one of the reasons I always like to do the cosmetic stuff first. But like I said, there are those times you see something, you want to go back, clean it up. like to get in there and make sure that I didn't dull it. And sometimes, to be 100% sure, I might even hone it again. I'm definitely going to paper cut test it again. So now I'm just going to clean off any of that black gook. And you can look, see how nice and shiny this is now. And it doesn't hurt, you know, because it's going to look great when they get it back. Because it's now nice and shiny. Let me kill this. I want to check and make sure that I didn't dull it in any way, and I did not. But when I first started out, there was a few times when I wasn't as great with my buffer that I dulled the knife because I accidentally hit the buff. So I still try and do buffing first, but if you have to do it second, just check it, make sure everything is good. All right, and that whole set is done with the Paramilitary and the 3 Japanese knives.